Tonight, settle in as we float to a small, cozy place, a stellar sanctuary tucked beneath a patchwork of rain. Let your breath find its own slow rhythm. Breathe in and feel the cool edge of the night. Breathe out and let the weight of the day soften into the mattress. Allow your shoulders to drop just a fraction, like a curtain easing down. Imagine the sound of rain at your window, steady and patient. Each drop a tiny bell on a distant planet. Let that gentle tide carry you toward a single, warm light. Lily wakes to rain. It is the kind of rain that stitches the air with a soft, persistent thread, a hush that takes the sharp edges off the world. She lies a moment longer beneath the duvet, noticing the low, steady music of water on glass, and lets her fingers uncurl. The room holds the soft afterglow of an early lamp. Fairy lights, a thin garland, twinkle like a scatter of close, familiar stars around the headboard. The lights are small and deliberate, not the cold blaze of faraway constellations, but the kind of twinkle that seems to say, "You are seen here," and all is gentle. She pads kitchenwards in slippers that are warm and woolen, the kind that remember the shape of her feet. In the kettle, a small organized breath of steam rises and curls, the bakery's morning nebula gathering in the top of the room. She makes tea first, strong and clear, the leaves unfurling like slow green comets. The mug in her hands is a weight of comfort. She holds it to her lips and lets the heat settle through her chest. Outside, the painted door of the bakery waits across the street, bright with its many colors. A strip of deep indigo at the top, a band of mossy green, a cheerful splash of marigold at the bottom. It looks for all the world like a small planet with a painted surface, and when Lily opens it, the breeze brings an aroma of rain and dust, and the faint echo of the pavement. The shop is small and honest, a harbor for hands and for work. Shelves that hold jars of spice like little planets in jars. A wooden counter worn smooth by years of palms. A low oven that hums like a dependable heartbeat. She moves by ritual. The rituals here are gentle and slow, like orbits that have learned their paths. First, the oven is coaxed awake, a warm exhale into the room. A kettle is set to the small hob beneath, and Lily folds her cardigan around her shoulders. She ties her apron with a careful, quiet knot. It is an apron with a few faint flower freckles and a small patch stitched by her grandmother's hand. There are tiny notes in that stitching, a margin of a recipe kept safe, a line of ink that has softened with years. The bakery is in many ways an heirloom in motion. On this morning she starts with cinnamon rolls. There is no rush. She presses the dough with slow, even fingers, feeling its soft resistance like the gentle pull of a moon's tide. The smell of yeast and warmth begins to rise, and she scores the dough in deliberate arcs. Cinnamon is rubbed into the crevices in a quiet, methodical motion. The spice is smoky, not sharp, a memory of autumn in every breath. The rolls are placed in the oven, and in the time they need to turn golden. Lily arranges the things that make the place feel inhabited. A small pot of wildflowers by the window, a line of chipped cups on a shelf, a pair of reading glasses folded on the ledger. While the rolls bake, Lily turns to the pumpkin pie. She does not measure as one who must instruct. She remembers instead the margin notes her grandmother left in a small, blotted notebook, a loop of handwriting that leans like an old tree. The crust is made with hands that have learned the language of warmth. Press, fold, tuck. The pumpkin filling is a gentle orange moon, spiced with whispers of cinnamon and clove, the scent of it mingling with the oven's breath. As the pie slides into its warmth, the bakery fills with a soft, smoky sweet perfume. It moves like a tide around the counter, tempted into corners and across the front window. Outside, the rain keeps its quiet time, and inside the fairy lights blink a little like distant, approving stars. There are small, repeated sounds in the shop that act like a lullaby. A drawer opens with a soft sigh. A wooden spoon taps the side of a bowl. The oven door closes with a muted click. When Lily wipes her hands on the edge of her apron, she feels the flour dust in a light cloud over her palms, fine as stardust. These are the small, satisfying motions that mark a day into being a sanctuary. Attention given to ordinary things until they glow. Seamus arrives with the predictability of a calm moonrise. He is an elderly regular. He walks with a soft, deliberate step, and a scarf that always looks as if it has seen 3 good winters. He wears a hat that has an endearing, threadbare crown, and carries a paper bag with the half-forgotten newsprint of a small-town column. When he steps in, the bell above the door gives a gentle, familiar tinkle, and the warmth of the shop kisses his cheeks. He sits at the little round table near the window, hands folded over the paper bag like a small offering. He is the sort of person whom the bakery seems to have grown around, as if he were a planted tree, and the bakery the ivy that promises shelter. They share a slice. Not out of ceremony, but because this is how their mornings have learned to talk to each other. Lily sets a plate between them, and the pie's steam lifts, carrying cinnamon into the circle of their hands. Seamus closes his eyes for a soft moment, as if committing the taste to some private map. He hums a note that is almost a contented breath, and Lily smiles in a way that presses against the edges of the day and makes it gentler. Conversation is slow and low. They exchange small observations about the rain's rhythm, about the neighbors' cats, one white, one black, who have been seen curled together under a low hedge. Seamus mentions, quietly, that the fairy lights look like a sort of constellational neighborhood when the fog comes in. Lily agrees, and the words hang there like a tiny, shared comet. When the shop grows a little fuller, a pair of twins with cheeks still pinched from sleep, a courier who drops off a bundle wrapped in brown paper, a woman with a green scarf who lingers to ask for directions. Lily moves between them with the calm of someone who knows each of their small orbits. She listens to a child's secret with the reverence of a priest at a shrine. She folds a napkin the way her grandmother once folded a letter, careful around corners. These small acts are the grammar of belonging. At the counter, the fairy lights are arranged above the pastry display, their glow low and honeyed. They cast a constellation across the glass case that catches on the beads of sugar and the little sugared edges. Lily thinks of them as stars that have settled near shoulder height. For human eyes and human hands, it is a comforting image, that the sky might descend in little ways, that the universe is not only vast and distant, but also threaded into the cups and plates we pass between one another. If this quiet voyage suits you, and you would like to return to this harbor again, keep this story within reach for nights when you want a gentle harbor. Let the words be a small key. The morning moves on in gentle circles. People depart with parcels and soft goodbyes. The bell above the door is as steady as a heartbeat. Lily cleans a tray, wiping away crumbs with slow, satisfying strokes, and watches the rain draw pale veins along the glass. Outside, the pavement reflects the shop's colored door like a small inverted galaxy. A neighbor crosses with a dog in tow. He tips his hat, and the dog's nails make soft music on the wet cobbles. Later that same week, the air cooler now, the trees shedding leaves in a quiet, steady snowfall of brown and gold. Lily wakes to wind. The morning has a different character. Not the patient, silky rain, but a blustery insistence that pushes at the windows and tucks under the eaves. She lingers a little longer under the duvet, because the bed still holds the memory of sleep like warmth in a pocket. The wind is a low, moving thing outside. It bends the lamplight and shakes the fairy lights so that they tremble and then settle like tiny, blinking beacons. On such a day she turns to apples. Baked apples, she thinks, will fill the shop with a rounded, gentle perfume. She selects each fruit with the care of someone choosing small planets for a shelf of a constellatory library. Their skins are taut, and their colors are a muted chorus of reds and greens, each with a little star of freckle here or there. In the drawer, she finds her grandmother's notebook, pages soft with age, the ink a little faded, but the words persistent. Her grandmother annotated recipes like blessings, a note that the apples should be cored to the heart but not through, a shorthand that Lily has respected for years. These marginalia are more than instruction. They feel like a convoy of advice sent forward through time. She cores the apples with an old, reliable tool, a small, deliberate movement that leaves each hollow like a tiny crater ready to receive stars. The filling is uncomplicated. Soft fruit, a spoonful of something brown and warm, a scattering of crumbs that will become caramelized in their nests. She remembers the small acts her grandmother used to do while the apples baked. Set the table with mismatched plates, invite a neighbor for tea, fold a napkin in two and slip a sweet inside like a secret. Those memories crease her like a map. She follows them not because she must, but because they feel like returning home. The wind grows stronger as she arranges the apples on a tray. Each one is set like a small, luminous body, a roundness that will shine when the sugars melt and the juices bubble. Lily covers them with a cloth as the oven takes them in, and the warmth that begins to spread through the shop is soft and encompassing. It is a warmth that does not demand but invites. Outside the painted door, a flurry of leaves slaps the pavement like a quiet applause. She thinks, for a moment, of the umbrella she left by the back door the other week. The yellow and green polka-dot umbrella with its little wooden handle. It is, in her mind, a small absurdity of color against a gray sky. She had meant to repair its snapped rib, but had not yet found the time between bread kneading and opening the till. There is a small, private worry that tucks itself into her chest like a pebble, that someone might think it abandoned. The neighbors are the sort of people who notice these small domestic stories. Rose, who comes by with raw wool tucked under her arm and hands that smell faintly of soil, keeps an eye out for such misplacements. She is the sort of friend who brings a vase without expecting flowers in return. She shops for mismatched china on bric-a-brac days, and mends socks as if they were small, secret acts of devotion. On this morning, when the wind is scolding the world, Rose appears at the door like a comet with a tail of raindrops. She carries something wrapped in tissue paper and tied with string. Her hair is tucked under a cozy hat, and she moves with that steady energy of someone who has lived their warmth. She pauses on the threshold, breath fogging in a small cloud, and when she smiles, it is a bright, simple thing. Lily greets her with a soft, genuine delight. Rose's presence is like knowing you are not alone in the small politics of everyday living. There is a moment, a delicate, everyday pause, where they stand in the doorway, the street's wind and the shop's warmth meeting like two currents. Rose hands over the package, and Lily's fingers brush the paper. Rose's hands are warm, and her nails are faintly stained with the brown of earth. Inside the paper is something that unfolds like a small, cheerful secret. For a heartbeat, Lily thinks it might be a scarf, or perhaps a jar of something pickled. But when the paper peels away, it reveals the yellow and green polka dot umbrella, its handle smooth and familiar. It is not new in the harsh way of things bought yesterday. Instead, it has been chosen and mended and gifted like a promise. "You left this on the bench by the green, didn't you?" Rose says, a soft certainty in her voice. Seamus, who has been standing at the counter tending to his tea, looks up and smiles as if the world has just made an agreeable, small, and proper arrangement. Lily feels something uncoil inside her, a sort of relieved gratitude that smells in memory of caramelized apple. She takes the umbrella, holding its curve like one might hold a small arch of sky. It is not only cheerful in its color, but also practical, an object that will keep you dry and that will, in passing, brighten another wet day. The gift feels like a stitch. It reconnects a small thread that had frayed in the weather. They both stand for a moment, the rain making a soft insistence against the panes, and the shop is quiet except for the oven's low hum and the soft breathing of the room. Outside, the fairy lights are borrowed by the fog that comes down in a thin silver veil. Up close, their bulbs are small and tender like eggs of light. In that hush, a thought forms, nameless at first, that these small exchanges between people make a pattern, a constellation of gestures. Each kindness is a star in a map that directs the heart. "Your grandmother would have approved," Rose says, nodding toward the apples in the oven. Her voice carries the ease of someone who remembers people as constellations of stories, not statistics. Lily smiles. The notebook with the margin notes is back on the counter, a soft, worn thing. She traces the handwriting with a fingertip as if reading braille of the past. The apple pies will come out soon, and the shop will fill with their rounded scent, but that feels safe and certain. For now there is warmth and company, and the small steady pleasure of a mended thing. A child outside presses her nose against the window for a moment, watching the lights and the steam. Inside, a pair of twins tugs at their father's coat, wide-eyed and delighted by the idea of apples and the prospect of a sweet. The day takes on the gentle structure of a story being told aloud. Beginning, small rise, and a patient expectation. Lily finds a wooden spoon and stirs the last of the filling, and the motion is slow and rhythmic, a circle that matches the rhythm of the rain. It is in these soft repetitions that the bakery feels most like a vessel, not stationary, but floating, buoyed by the warmth of ovens and the low, constant tide of people coming and going. The fairy lights above the counter beam their tiny points of light into the steam that rises as the apples finish. The steam moves like a pale, gentle nebula drifting across the ceiling, and for a moment the room takes on the hush of a chapel or a small planet. Rose tightens the cork of a thermos she has brought for Lily and offers it over. A brimming cup of something warm, and along with it a small apology for the trouble of the umbrella. Lily accepts with the small ceremony of hands meeting hands. The thermos is an anchor, and the umbrella a bright, folded moon. They both laugh softly, the sound like low chimes, and the laughter is exactly the kind that does not break the spell. It simply adds another quiet note to the shop's song. Beyond the window, the wind tugs the fairy lights into a delicate dance. The neighbors' white and black cats appear, as if summoned by the scent, tails held high like flags. They wind themselves around the table legs, accept strokings with a dignity only animals possess, and then settle into a warm knot near the oven where the heat is a private sun. Their breathing is that measured, content rhythm that deepens the stillness of the room. Lily thinks of bulbs that must be planted in the little strip of garden at the shop's front. She remembers Rose's hands in the soil last autumn, small and deft, pushing a tulip into its bed as if tucking a child in for a nap. There is a plan, sweet and quiet, to plant more this week when the weather is kind. Bulbs are little promises for another season, and they feel like investments in a future constellation of color. For now, though, the day is wired to the present. The oven's sighs, the apple's soft bubbling, the low trade of conversation. A parcel in the corner contains a stack of napkins, hand-embroidered by a local seamstress. A teenager asks politely about a job helping with the evening's cookie decorating. The twins chatter about a snow that might be coming tomorrow. The shop is an attentive thing, a small lit vessel that keeps a catalogue of human weather. As the apples brown their skins and the kitchen's aroma thickens into something almost sacred, Lily steps back and wipes her palms on her apron. She looks up at the fairy lights, their small arranged constellations, and for a beat imagines the bakery as a ship drifting high and placid through a quiet universe. The oven's glow is a compass. The door's paint is a banner. Each tray of pastry is a tiny satellite in orbit around the counter. The people who move in and out are the steady, familiar gravity. There's a soft bell again. Someone at the door. A new presence, a small sound like a pebble dropped into still water. Lily turns. The shop's light, and the rain's steady percussion, and the steam's white nebula all come together in the moment. The door swings, and a figure stands framed in the rain. She looks familiar, but the angle of the hood hides her face for a breath. She removes it with delicate fingers, and the light catches on a small smudge of soil at the cuff. She holds in one hand the wrapped parcel, the polka-dot umbrella now reborn as a gift. Her eyes are bright in the rain's reflection, and she breathes a careful, warm hello. Lily steps forward, and the room seems to fold around them. The oven's hum deepens. The fairy lights above the counter wink as if acknowledging the return of something small and important. Seamus leans back in his chair with the easy curiosity of someone who knows when stories are about to be exchanged. Rose's voice is low and steady. "I thought you might like this back," she says, and the umbrella opens with a soft, contented whisper. The colors bloom in the shop's light, cheerful and familiar. Lily takes it, feeling the familiar curve in her hands again. She remembers the day she left it at the bench, a small, absent-minded thing, and the way the sky had then been a stubborn, featureless gray. Now it is here, and with it comes a tiny, unspoken settling. An old friend passes by the window and lifts a hand. Somewhere outside a child calls the name of a dog, and the sound is absorbed by the rain. The twins press their noses to the glass, watching the umbrella's pattern as if it were a new map. Lily's fingers find the margin notes again, and she laughs softly, a sound like flower chimes. They stand for a beat, the four of them, Lily and Rose, Seamus, the twins hovering, in a quiet constellation. The fairy lights above them are like guideposts. The steam from the pies shivers and settles, and then rises again, moving slow and sure. There is, in such small gatherings, a perfection of the ordinary, warmth shared, a thing returned, a mutual attention given with no fanfare. And yet life, as it does, keeps its gentle movement. There are more customers to attend to. There will be the perfect batch of cookies to prepare, and later, the careful work of fudge on a foggy morning. The bulbs still need planting. The neighbor will drop by with a jar of honey. The twins will insist on helping, and there will be flour on tiny noses and sticky fingers, and the whole shop will hum with a soft, busy joy that is the bakery's particular kind of cosmos. For now the shop breathes, content and slow. The rain continues its patient arithmetic on the window. The fairy lights act like a small galaxy above the counter, each bulb a modest, constant star. Lily folds the umbrella and props it by the door. Rose tucks a note into the notch of a shelf. Seamus takes another, smaller bite of pie as if storing the flavor away for a later, private use. Outside, the street is glossed with wet. The neighbors' cats shift, their ears twitching to the far-off pattern of a car passing. The day moves on, slow and consistent, and the bakery stays its small, luminous course. When Lily moves to fetch another tray, a curious thing happens. A postman arrives with a letter that bears the seal of a local gardening society. It is an invitation to take part in a community planting next month. A celebration of bulbs and bulbs planted in neat, hopeful rows. Lily tucks the letter into her apron pocket, the paper warm from her side, and for a moment imagines hands in soil, the dark turned over and full of patient promise. The image comforts her, like a small steady star returning to its familiar arc. She sets the tray into the oven and draws a slow breath. The shop catches around her like a cloak, and the fairy lights above seem to place a soft, protective dome over the room. The steam rises, the rain continues its quiet arithmetic, and the oven whispers its warming song. Outside, the painted door is a slice of bright color against a subdued sky, and the neighborhood moves in its small, weathered orbits. There are, in the corner, 2 small packages waiting for a customer who will be back this afternoon. A child has left a note asking whether they could make a cookie shaped like a star. A neighbor has left a jar of preserves on the windowsill with a post-it that reads simply, "For when the days grow long and dull." Lily smiles at these tiny offerings, at the small constellations they form. As the morning settles toward noon, the light in the shop softens into a peaceful amber hush. The oven hums on. The fairy lights glimmer with that steady, unassuming glow that makes you feel understood. Lily wraps a slice of pie and hands it across the counter to Seamus, who takes it like a small benediction. He thanks her with his usual care and leaves a few coins and a note that says, "For the bulbs." Lily tucks both into the till like a promise. There is a ripple of contentment in the room, an acknowledgement that life, when gathered in small, kindled places, becomes easier to bear. The bakery is, in that sense, exactly what its name suggests. It is a sanctuary, anchored to the street and yet floating with its own kind of gentle gravity. Above, the fairy lights keep their constellation. Below, on the counter, a single cinnamon roll steams and waits. Outside, the weather begins to change again. The wind sags into a hush, and from the gray of the clouds comes a hush of snow, not fierce or blinding, but the soft, polite arrival of a first flurry that dusts the pavement like powdered sugar. The twins clap and press their faces to the glass in delighted wonder. Lily moves to the window and watches the flakes make delicate circuits through the air. They fall in no hurry, as if choosing their landing with polite care. The shop feels smaller in the largest, most comfortable way. It feels complete in its warmth. The fairy lights above the counter twinkle through the steam and the first snowflakes like little far-off suns, each catching the light and keeping it for a moment before they melt into the room's mild breath. She reaches for the notebook again, that soft relic of marginalia and memory, and opens it to a page where the recipe for cookies is scrawled in a hand she knows well. She reads the note and lets the words soften her, like a hand on the shoulder. The page suggests shapes, colors, a practice of slow assembly rather than of hurried measure. She smiles and thinks of the coming days, of children with fingers full of icing, of a tree that will one day wear cookies like ornaments, of neighbors sharing cups of something sweet and hot. The sound of footsteps approaches, a soft, rhythmic tapping on the window, and then a knock at the door. She moves toward it with the easy certainty of someone who knows the pattern of days. The bell tinkles, the rain plays its slow metronome. The oven hums like the deep engine of a quiet ship. Lily opens the door to find a familiar face, cheeks flushed from the cold, and hands tucked into pockets. It is one of the twins, older now by an hour, holding a small paper bag with a star drawn on it in crayon. They press the bag into Lily's hands and giggle. "For the cookie tree," they say, as if this is the most important thing in the world. Lily laughs softly in answer, a sound that is a little like the chime of the fairy lights above. She takes the bag and promises to make something special, and when the child runs back out into the snow, the flakes cupping their hair like sequins, Lily returns to the counter with her heart warmed by such small, uncomplicated trust. She sets the bag on the middle shelf where it joins other little offerings: a pressed leaf, a hand-drawn postcard, a button in a small dish. There is, in every small object, the arc of story. A beginning in a child's imagination, a middle in the careful making, an end in the shared moment of tasting. The bakery collects these arcs like stars collecting into a new, personal sky. As the afternoon approaches, the shop settles into a muted interlude. The steady rain that had been the first accompaniment to the morning has become a gentle hush of sleet and snow. The oven's glow seems to deepen as if to compensate. Lily lights another small candle on the counter, a soft, nearly imperceptible flame that adds another point of warmth to the room's constellation. She moves with the steady, measured motions of someone who knows the calming power of repetition. Fold, press, slide into the oven, wait. Each action is a soft repetition that lulls the shop into a comfortable predictability. There are plans to make more. A perfect batch of cookies for an evening decorating party. Stained glass treats that will hang like little orbs. Fudge to be made when fog rolls in next week, and bulbs to be planted when the ground is kind. But for this moment the world is made of smaller things. A pie cooling on a windowsill, an umbrella drying by the door, the neighbor's cats curled by the oven, fairy lights above spreading their small constellations. Lily takes a breath and feels the room's warmth settle into her bones. The bakery is more than counter and oven. It is a tiny vessel of gatherings, of returned umbrellas, of pies that taste like memory, of notes slipped into aprons. It is a sanctuary, yes, and yet it feels like a little ship as well, afloat in a quiet universe where rain and steam and fairy lights form a comforting map. She draws a tray of warm rolls from the oven and sets them on the cooling rack. Their tops are golden and delicate. The smell is a soft, enveloping comfort. She slices one open and spreads a little butter on it. It melts like a whisper. The shop hums. She hands the roll to Seamus, who accepts it like a practiced ritual. And as he bites into it, there's a small, delighted hum that expands into a soft contentment shared by everyone in the room. At the counter, a bell rings softly as the door opens once more. A postman arrives with a parcel addressed to the bakery. A small box of glass beads, perhaps for a future decoration, perhaps a gift. Lily signs for it with calm deliberation, folding the paper into its place. The beads, later, will catch the fairy lights and dangle like little earthbound stars. She glances at the clock and then at the window. The snow is thicker now, turning the street into a pale sheet that muffles sound. The world beyond the door seems to have grown slower, kinder. The bakery's lights look brighter for it, as if the darkness has made their small sparks more noticeable, more precious. Lily thinks of the word sanctuary, and how it fits here in a way that is practical and tender. Sanctuary as shelter, yes, but also as a place where the small rituals of making and sharing are held in reverence. The bakery is where people come to take refuge from weather and small anxieties, to trade a slice of pie for a moment of warmth. In that exchange, in those traded moments, the place becomes something like a quiet universe, intimate, manageable, endlessly forgiving. There are moments when the mind wanders to larger thoughts, to the vastness beyond the street's edge. Lily sometimes imagines the shop as a little craft on a vast night, lights blinking like the tiny beacons of a vessel navigating calm dark. The metaphor comforts rather than overwhelms. It does not make the bakery smaller, but makes it part of something larger and gentler. Here is a place glowing softly against the cold. Here is a place where human hands make things that taste of home. Here is a place where the ordinary becomes sacred, simply because it is shared. The afternoon wears on, and the light strips away to a gentle blue dusk. Customers thin out to a few regulars who linger with the patience of people with no hurry. And the twins, after a brief return with sticky fingers and radiant faces, wave goodbye with mittened hands. The neighbors' cats curl tighter, their tails tucked like commas, and the oven exhales one last time before its evening nap. Lily prepares a small tray for the twins to take home. A star-shaped cookie, stained glass center catching the last light, wrapped in a paper that smells faintly of sugar. She writes a note that says, "For your sky," with a little sparkle. She tucks the note beneath the tray with a neatness that feels almost ceremonial. There is a soft hush then, a lull in the shop's activity that feels like the pause before the next small event. Lily moves through the space with the easy familiarity of someone who is at once caretaker and voyager. She flips the switch that dims the fairy lights a notch, not fully, just enough so they hold back like constellations behind a light mist. The shop becomes a gently breathing entity, content in its service. Outside, the snow thickens into a velvet curtain, and the street lamps begin to claim their own halos. The painted door, now edged in a soft, powdery lace of snow, looks almost theatrical in the winter light. Inside, the fairy lights blink with the slow cadence of stars greeted by first frost. As the day leans toward evening, Lily hears a soft, pleased murmur from the next table. The twins chatter about tomorrow's plans for cookie decorations, and Seamus offers a small piece of advice about the warmth of a good kettle. Rose laces her fingers around a cup of something that steams between them. The shop holds their conversations like a secret it has promised to keep. There is a restful, satisfying rhythm to the place at this hour. Small talk that is not demanding, movements that neither hurry nor stagnate, and the easy knowledge that tomorrow will bring more of the same gentle work. Lily folds her hands for a moment and lets the silence sit on them like a favorite shawl. She reaches for the notebook again, that reliable tether to the past and to the recipes that have become rituals. The pages open to a scribbled note about fudge, and her lips curve at the simple memory of the last time she made it. The pot clinking softly, the flavors of peppermint and orange making a quiet, friendly quarrel on the tongue. She imagines the foggy morning when she will make the fudge, the steam rising, and the fairy lights guiding them through the mist like small, steadfast stars. A shadow falls across the window as a car passes, scattering the snow into tiny eddies. The neighbors' cats lift their heads, then settle again. The shop's light is warm and low. Lily stands for a long, soft moment in the middle of the room and simply listens to the oven's faint afterbreath, to the kettle's occasional murmur, to the rain's shift into a softer, snow-laced hush. The sensation is a gentle tide that rocks the space, steady and sure. There are tasks yet undone, the cookie dough chilled, the stained glass centers waiting, bulbs to plant, letters to answer, small repairs that require a trip to Max's hardware in the week ahead. But these are small waves to be followed at leisure. The immediate universe is snug and bright. The bakery feels for now like the heart of a map. A clock in the corner ticks, soft as a pulse. The fairy lights above the counter glimmer and then hold. Seamus finishes his tea with the slow contentment of someone who has been fed more than food. He leaves a gentle, folded note in the tip jar that reads, "For when the garden wakes." Lily tucks that note away, feeling its paper like the hush after a story is told. The evening takes on a hush that is almost ceremonious. Outside, the snow begins to hush the world into the same slowness the shop already keeps. Lily closes the ledger for the day with a slow, satisfying motion, and extinguishes the candle at the counter with the careful attention of one who respects small flames. The shop settles around her like a snug coat. She moves to the window and watches the snow create a softened horizon. And in that pale wash, the fairy lights gleam as if someone has tipped a small jar of stars over the room. For a moment, she lets herself imagine the bakery as a vessel again, not lost, but intentionally afloat. A sanctuary drifting through a quiet, friendly universe. The metaphor gives her a sense of being cradled rather than exposed, and it is a thought that eases the shoulders and loosens the jaw. There is a knock at the door, a soft, deliberate sound that is different from the children's excited raps. Lily opens the door to find a young woman wrapped in a cloak, cheeks pink from the cold. She is holding out a small envelope, which she proffers with a slightly embarrassed smile. "A note for you," she says, "from someone who used to come here a lot. Said they wanted to pass on thanks." Lily accepts the envelope and feels a small, warm twitch of curiosity. The note is simple, lined, and neat, and when she reads it, her smile widens in a private, pleased way. The words inside are quiet. Gratitude for the pie that tasted like childhood. Thanks for the warmth on hard days. A memory of a small kindness once received here. Lily folds the note and places it into the notebook as if adding a new margin. The shop, for all its ordinary tasks and rituals, keeps a ledger not only of sales, but of gifts. Notes like these, donated jars, returned umbrellas, the postcards left on the notice board. They are the true currency of the place, the small human offerings that make a sanctuary what it is. She sets the envelope carefully in the notebook and looks up just in time to see someone across the street move beneath a lamplight. Gloved hands tucked into pockets, shoulders drawn against the snow. The world outside the bakery is wide and frosted, but inside there is a curated, careful warmth that resists the cold. Fairy lights above the counter blink as if in agreement. The bakery's lights dim further as the evening deepens. Lily takes a final look around the room, a clerk's careful check of each small corner, and her eye catches the little jar of buttons on the shelf, the pressed leaf tucked into a recipe, the note about bulbs. These small tokens, collected over seasons, make up a constellation that maps the shop's heart. In the back, the oven gives a last soft exhale and cools. The twin boys have been in the back. The oven gives a last soft exhale and cools. The twin boys have been curled on a low bench, knees tucked, trading quiet plans for tomorrow's games, and worrying gently about who will get to hang the brightest cookie on the little tree. Their breath fogs the air for a moment, and then clears. They whisper, and then are distracted by the sight of a stained glass cookie cooling on the rack, its jewel-like center catching a stray beam of light and sending a tiny, careful sparkle across the counter. Lily watches them with a half-smile, the sort that stores away small, perfect things for later. Soon it is time for the cookies. Preparation here is a small, rhythmic ritual. It is less about precision and more about cadence. Lily lifts one bowl and lets the wooden spoon orbit the edge in gentle circles, the sound a soft, even accompaniment to the rain. Trays are lined up like little satellites, waiting to be launched. Dough, tender and pliant, yields under her hands like a softened clay. She presses a cutter down, lifts the shapes free, and lays them on the sheet with a care that makes even the smallest star feel considered. The motion is slow and soothing. Press, lift, settle. Each repeat is a small benediction. The stained glass centers are the kind of thing that makes children widen their eyes. Little windows set into sugar, colored like the bright marbles you might have found in a biscuit tin once upon a time. Lily calls them windows to the twins, and they nod sagely. Candy discs are set aside, and later, under a gentle warmth, they melt into translucent pools that hold color as if it were a memory made visible. The effect is diluted and domestic rather than showy. Amber, ruby, green like tiny planets caught in pastry. When the candy softens, Lily fills the cutouts with calm, steady hands and slides the trays into the oven, where heat turns the sugars into glossy glass and the edges into a soft, toasty hug. She lines another tray with chocolate chip cookies, each one studded like a small rock of comfort. The chocolate is not dramatic. It slumps and glows in the middle, creating little wells that seem to promise a slow, satisfying melt. The act of spooning batter onto a tray is unhurried, almost ceremonial. Each mound a small private hill that will become a warm, shareable thing minutes later. The oven door opens and closes in a muted rhythm, the air shifting in a low, familiar way that feels like a chest breathing in a steady, contented sleep. As the cookies bake, Lily sets out bowls of colored sugar and a scattering of small sweets. A rolling pin rests lightly on the counter like an invitation. She takes a breath and looks around the room. Fairy lights overhead, their tiny bulbs spaced like close, watchful stars. The kettle hissing softly as it waits for attention. The window rimed in white where the snow has been most curious. The shop feels full of possibility without being busy. There is space enough for people to arrive, and for the sound of laughter to be a gentle current rather than a wave. Families begin to assemble for the decorating. The twins come back reluctantly from the bench, cheeks flushed red, and find their places on stools pulled up to the table. Parents cluster around with the easy, practiced patience of people who know that such gatherings are as much about being present as about imparting skill. Rose brings in a thermos and a bag of home-baked biscuits. She unwraps them and offers one to Lily, who accepts with a soft, grateful murmur. The neighbor, whose cats prowl under the tables, slips a woolen scarf off and drapes it on the back of a chair. Small domesticities fold into one another with the same gentle gravity that keeps pages together in a well-thumbed book. The decorating begins in a calm chorus. A child presses a thumb into dough and giggles as the shape makes a perfect star. Another chooses colors with intense deliberation, as if assigning names to planets. The twins debate whether to make a cookie that looks like the moon or like a comet. Lily simply listens, offering now and then a low, approving sound. She sprinkles a little sugar over a cookie and watches it catch the light, glittering like frost. Hands move in small, deliberate motions. A smear of icing here, a scatter of sprinkles there. The rhythm of the room slows to match the work. Calm breaths, soft conversations, the occasional delighted exclamation that does not startle but joins the soft orchestra of the day. Outside, the snow continues to fall in polite flakes, thinning the world into an image that could be a memory. Each flake seems to take its time choosing its place. Through the glass, pedestrians pass like blurred thoughts, muffled by their coats and the night's growing hush. The bakery's windows glow amber against the bluing dusk, and the fairy lights shimmer through the steam that rises from the trays. It is, for a while, impossible to decide where the warmth ends and the cold begins. The border is a gentle, permeable seam. The cookie tree is arranged in a corner near the window. A small tabletop branch set into a heavy pot, its twigs bare and patient. Children approach it with the solemnity of people offering a votive. One by one they hang their cookies, some clumsy, some exquisite. And each time a new ornament settles, the tree seems to sit a little straighter. The stained glass cookies, pendant and luminous, catch the fairy lights and send back fragments of color. Neighbors who pass the window slow their steps to peer in, their faces brightening with a recognition that small public displays of handmade things can sometimes stitch a street together in a way nothing else will. Seamus stands a little to one side, watching the scene with a contentment that seems to flood his features. He offers a small remark about the way light looks through the sugar, and Lily answers softly. Their exchange more the passing of an old secret than a conversation. He slips a wrapped cookie into his pocket for later, a private treat to be saved for a moment when he needs the taste of this room. Rose ties a bright ribbon on one particularly proud cookie, and the twins declare in solemn voice that theirs is the most splendid in the whole galaxy. When the trays come out, their edges warm and the sugar centers glossy, the shop fills with a sound like a soft, communal intake, a small chorus of appreciation. Lily moves among the tables, pressing a word here, a quiet correction there, offering to do the last careful touches on a particularly sticky collar of icing. The children, soothed by the slow work, grow quieter. Their eyelids become heavy with the soft exertion of a day spent making. There is no pushing, only the steady, natural descent into contentment that such repetitive, gentle tasks encourage. A lull arrives, and Lily takes the moment to arrange the best of the cookies on a small card and place it on the counter as a kind of centerpiece. The stained glass ones glow like tiny domestic planets, each with its own hue and pattern. She steps back and watches the room radiate. People sharing, laughing softly, looking into their cups as if into wells. It is a human constellation, each person a light that makes sense of the others. As evening folds further over the day, the snow shifts into a heavier cloak, sound dampened into a muffled hush that only emphasizes the bakery's interior life. A passerby presses a nose to the pane, his breath fogging the glass. The twins wave at him as if in greeting to a visiting star. The kettle gives a final helpful sigh, and the oven settles into its evening rest. The fairy lights are dimmed to a smoky shimmer, not gone, but softer, as if the stars overhead are thinning into a long, slow blink. That night, when the last of the families have gone and the little cookie tree stands proud with its ornamented bounty, Lily walks the room and picks up the dropped ribbons, tucks stray napkins into the bin, and wipes the counters with movements that are slow and deliberate. She hums a small tune. Not quite a song, more of a sound kept between her teeth. And the sound fits itself into the room like a familiar tray into its slot. She gathers the remaining cookies into a tin, tucks in a note that reads, "For sharing," and places it on the windowsill for anyone who might need a biscuit on a foggy morning. Small, considerate gestures are a kind of currency here. In the quiet that follows, Lily reads the notebook by the dim side lamp. The recipe for cookies is there in the same handwritten script that has mapped much of the shop's history. Marginal notes suggest shapes and the sweetness of small, unhurried choices. She lingers on a line where her grandmother jotted, "Leave room for story." It is a line that Lily respects as much as any measurement. Stories, after all, are what fill the gaps between tasks and people, and the shop has become a repository of such margins. Notes and memories folded into aprons, tucked behind jars, kept in the memory of the bench. The next morning arrives with a different kind of weather, a fog that moves with a hush, a tendency to conceal and soften rather than to announce. The world outside the bakery is reduced to a series of softened silhouettes. The street lamp across the way is a pale, diffused disk. The fog has a kindness to it when it is not too thick. It presses everything into an intimate distance, asking you to take smaller steps. Lily makes a pot of coffee for herself, sets the kettle on a low flame, and moves through the motions of a morning that promises steam and warmth. Today is the day of fudge. Fudge is made with patience and a considerate hand. It needs attention, but not anxiety. Lily sets a double boiler and arranges the bowls in a careful arc. Dark chocolate that will become a deep, husky batch. A lighter pan for peppermint with a crisp, cool finish. Another with orange and hazelnut, the two flavors keeping one another company in a modest, pleasing way. There is nothing showy in the blending. Instead, it is a meeting of gentle tastes, each allowed to speak with restraint. Melting begins with a low, steady patience. The water below simmers in a small, unassuming way, and the chocolate softens, slick and heavy, losing its structure to become something more forgiving. Lily stirs with a spoon that she has had for years. The motion is slow, the sound a soft, dragging note against the bowl. She adds a measure of something sweet, and the mixture takes on a glossy sheen. Peppermint is introduced like a thought, a fresh clarity that lends a bright, polite contrast to the dense chocolate. Orange is folded in like a memory of summer, small citric sunbursts that linger in the middle of a cloud of sweetness. Hazelnut adds a rounded, earthy note, as if the smoothness of the chocolate has been given a companion with roots. While the fudge cools on trays, Lily steps outside to the tiny garden and begins to plant bulbs. The soil is damp but forgiving beneath her fingers. Rose joins her with a pair of gloves and a small trowel, and together they make little holes and tuck the bulbs in like promises folded into the earth. Their conversation is low and intermittent. It moves between the practical, the spacing of the bulbs, the best depth, and the sentimental. Recollections of last spring, of a particularly stubborn snail, of the delight when sprouts first force themselves through the frost. Planting bulbs is an act of deferred joy, an investment in future colors that feels honest and quietly radical. Max appears in his small van that morning, making a quick detour on a route that winds past the bakery. He leaves the van running and lifts a small packet from the passenger seat. A new trowel he has recommended, polished and practical. "Thought you might like this for the bulbs," he says, smiling in the way those who have lived here do, with recognition and small service. His cameo is brief. He exchanges a few words about a broken fence post 2 streets over and a friendly tip for the best compost. Then he continues on his route, leaving a faint smell of motor oil and rain in his wake. Max's visits are the kind that remind Lily that the neighborhood is a web of small needs, and the cheerful, useful responses to them. Back inside, cat-napped and content, the neighbors' white and black cats watch the planting from the doorstep, and then, satisfied with the garden's returns, curl up by the warm oven again when invited. The fog outside presses close to the windows, and fairy lights inside glow in warm defiance, their bulbs a gentle scatter of stars against a low, misted sky. The fudge sets into slabs of quiet decadence. It is cut into hand-sized portions and wrapped in paper that crinkles softly. Lily writes small labels in careful script. Peppermint, orange and hazelnut, classic dark. Neat little declarations that will match the small packages handed over the counter. As the afternoon moves, Rose and Lily sit for a few minutes with hot cups and share a quiet slate of recollections. Rose talks about a winter many years ago, when the river near her old house froze in a way that made the reeds bow into the water. Lily listens and offers a flour-dusted anecdote about a cake that refused to rise. They both laugh softly. Their laughter is a low chime. These are the moments that keep the shop deep in its own season. Not the profuse, showy things that demand headlines, but the soft, patient exchanges that become the steadying grammar of a community. A customer appears at the door with a small hand-woven basket of bulbs given in thanks for a pie, and Lily accepts the gift with a bow of the head, tucking it into the corner where tools and seed packets sleep. A teenager drops in to ask if there are any stories of apprenticeship. Lily answers with a measured warmth, inviting them to come on a slow day and to learn the particular patience the shop requires. People come and go with the easy rhythm of a place that is comfortable in its weather. The day for fudge winds down toward evening. The fog has a way of thickening the air into a near silence. The sound of footsteps outside is more deliberate, each one carrying slightly more attention because it is not lost in other noise. Fairy lights above the counter flicker like small, discreet beacons, and each biscuit and bar in the display case looks like an object of careful thought. Lily takes a moment to stand by the window and consider the scene. Steam from the kettle rises like a gentle nebula, and the fairy lights, caught in its thinness, look like tiny stars suspended through a pale cloud. For a breath, she lets the image settle. The shop, as a small vessel afloat in a quiet universe where kindness maps the route. She presses a fingertip to the pane and leaves a small, temporary print on the glass. Outside, the world is softened. Inside, warmth carries on its own obvious orbit. As dusk deepens, Rose helps Lily clear the worktops and they place the last wrapped bars into a wooden crate for delivery the next morning. The twins run in for a brief encore, cheeks flushed, and each is given a thin slice of fudge as a treat. They hold it like treasure and then dissolve into small, grateful smiles. Seamus stops by long enough to exchange a few quiet words, and to leave a note tucked into the jar marked tips. A tiny donation toward the bulb fund, and a comment in his handwriting that always reads like a small blessing. There is an ease to the closing that feels almost like a ritual itself. Lily sweeps crumbs into a neat pile and wipes the boards until they are nearly reflective. She folds the aprons and hangs them on their peg, each with its own dust of flour. The fairy lights are dimmed a little more. They do not go out but move to a softer register, a way of easing the room into sleep. The oven is turned off with a slow, satisfying click, and the kettle is emptied and stowed. The ledger is closed, and a page is tucked into the notebook, where the new note about bulbs sits like a seed waiting for the right weather. Before she locks up, Lily takes one last look around the shop. The cookie tree stands like a small decorated planet in its pot. Stained glass ornaments twinkle. A tin of cookies waits on the sill for the late walker who might need a warm hand. The umbrella is propped in its place by the door, a bright, cheerful moon of fabric. The neighbors' cats breathe quietly in the oven's afterglow, tails tucked. Seamus's note is folded and kept in a pocket for a later planting. The small offerings the shop has collected, notes, jars, buttons, and pressed leaves, sit like relics on the shelf, modest, beloved. Outside, the fog trousers the street with a soft weight, turning lamplight into halos and simplifying the world to shapes and small beliefs. Lily steps across the threshold, shuts the painted door behind her, and takes a moment to feel the temperature shift as the cool of the evening touches the warmth still on her hands. Her breath steams in the air, and for a second she can see her exhalation hang like a brief, pale comet that dissolves almost at once. Walking home, she notices the familiar markers of her neighborhood. The lamp posts bowed under frost, a neighbor's cat silhouette on a low wall, and the way that the world outside the bakery is both separate and continuous with the little sanctuary she tends. The street seems quieter now, the fog making everything look as if it's been brushed by a gentler hand. She moves with the same rhythm she has kept all day, unhurried, measured, considerate. At home, Lily allows the kitchen light to remain soft and pours herself a cup of tea. She sits for a few minutes by the window in the living room, the one with fairy lights draped like a small domestic aurora. She reads the notebook again, turning to the page where her grandmother's handwriting leans with a calm certainty. Fingers trace the line, and the words feel like a map. Leave room for story. Leave room for coffee and for conversation. The margin notes are reminders of an inheritance that is not monetary, but tactile and warm. Lily sips her tea and lets the steam fog the glass for a moment, watching the rain and the snow and the fog play their slow, patient games. Her thoughts are gentle and uncomplicated. She thinks of how the shop has changed the street and how the street has softened the shop in return. She thinks of the way the fairy lights gather steam and how the cookies hang like small handmade stars. She feels the day like an embroidered band worn across the heart. The cookies, the pies, the apples, the fudge, the bulbs planted in soil and in memory. Back in bed, allow your breath to lengthen, to widen into a gentle tide. Let your shoulders unknit and your hands rest heavy at your sides. Imagine, if you like, the warm light of Lily's shop drifting across a calm sea of night. See the fairy lights as small beacons, steady and patient, and the steam that slipped from ovens as a pale nebula, moving slow and sure across the ceiling. The stellar sanctuary is quiet now. It floats not because it is fleeing anything, but because it has found its bearing in a vastness that is soft and kindly. Each small act inside it, the folding of a napkin, the offering of an umbrella, the tying of a bow, becomes part of a map that tells those who live near it how to be gentle with one another. The bakery is a tiny craft on a calm, starlit sea. Its lights blink with the modest, honest language of people taking care. Let your eyelids grow heavy like curtains at the end of a soft play. Let your breaths come in a measured, patient rhythm. Picture the biscuit tins on the windowsill, the cookie tree hung with little glass moons, the bulbs tucked in the dark, ready to push themselves into green. Picture Seamus's quiet satisfaction, Rose's steady presence, the twins' delighted chatter, and Max's helpful nodding in the street. These are the small constellations of a neighborhood, and they sit near one another with the ease of friends who know each other's clocks. If you enjoyed this gentle voyage and would like more small sanctuaries to visit, there are other quiet nights waiting. Keep this story somewhere soft and return when the weather asks for a harbor. For now, surrender to the slow gravity of sleep. Imagine the bakery's lights pulling you, not with force, but with a calm insistence to rest. Let the rain at your window be a steady tide. Let the steam of imagined ovens warm the lining of your chest. Drift with the thought that somewhere, in a cozy corner of the world, a little stellar sanctuary floats through a quiet universe, and you are welcome to arrive there in dreams.